It is the night of April 25th, 1973. You live in a quiet town in southern Illinois. The cornfields are still, and the only sound outside is the distant whistle of a freight train. Then, a sound interrupts the silence, scratching. It comes from your front door, steady and deliberate, as if something wants to get inside. You grip your revolver, pulse racing, and pull the door open. What you see is not a man, not a dog, not even an animal you recognize. It is short, gray, with wrinkled skin stretched over its body, glowing red eyes, and most disturbingly, 3 legs. In one moment, the impossible is real. You fire, the creature screams, and in 2 bounding leaps, it is gone into the night. This is the documented case of the Enfield Horror. Enfield, Illinois in 1973 was a small, rural town in White County. Fewer than 700 people lived there. It was the kind of place where life moved slowly. Neighbors waved to each other, families locked their doors at night, and most disturbances came from stray animals or teenagers playing pranks. Yet in April of that year, the quiet rhythm of life broke. Residents began to whisper about strange noises at night. Children told their parents they heard cries from the fields. Dogs barked and refused to settle. Some even claimed their pets acted terrified, tails low, ears flattened, staring at nothing visible in the darkness. The fear built slowly until it arrived at the home of a man named Henry McDaniel. At around 9 o'clock on the night of April 25th, McDaniel and his family heard something scratching at their door. At first, he thought it might be a dog or perhaps a stray raccoon. But the sound was persistent. Scrape, 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 like claws dragging across wood. When McDaniel opened the door, he saw it. In his own words, it was, quote, something with 3 legs on it, short, with 2 little arms like a T-Rex. It was about 4.5 feet tall, and it had pink eyes, as big as flashlights. End quote. The skin was gray and leathery, wrinkled and unnatural. The eyes glowed red in the darkness, and its movement was completely alien. It used its 2 back legs and a 3rd appendage to spring forward like no animal McDaniel had ever seen. Startled, he raised his revolver and fired 4 times. He swore 2 bullets struck the creature, yet it did not collapse. Instead, it let out a shriek, a high-pitched cry that McDaniel later said was like nothing he had ever heard before. Then, in 2 great leaps, the creature covered more than 50 feet and disappeared into the dark. When police arrived, they found deep scratches on the siding of the house, and in the soft ground near the porch, they saw prints. Footprints shaped like a dog's paw, but with 6 toes. They measured them. Each was nearly 3 inches across. The story did not end that night. 2 weeks later, on May 6th, McDaniel reported the creature again. He saw it at the edge of his property, moving just beyond the light of his yard. Once more, it bounded away on 3 legs when spotted. Neighbors, too, began to claim they had seen or heard something strange. Local children swore they saw a small, gray monster dart across the road. Others reported the same cry McDaniel had described echoing in the fields. As word spread, the small town of Enfield began to spiral into panic. Police patrols were increased, and deputies returned multiple times to investigate. They confirmed the strange tracks and filed official statements. Newspapers across southern Illinois picked up the story, dubbing the creature the Enfield Horror. And where there is fear, there is also curiosity. Within days, armed hunters began arriving in the area, hoping to spot or even kill the thing. Patrol cars had to be dispatched to warn them, and the sheriff's department threatened fines for trespassers shooting into the fields. What had started as one man's terrifying encounter was now the obsession of an entire county. Henry McDaniel remained the primary witness, but he was not the only one. His neighbors also gave statements. One family reported that their children saw a small gray creature running through the yard at incredible speed. Another claimed they were kept awake by a scream that pierced the night. Police officers who inspected the McDaniel property the morning after the first sighting documented the tracks and confirmed they were unlike any dog or wild animal. Reporters who interviewed McDaniel described him as a calm, reliable man, not the type to exaggerate or invent stories. He repeated the same details again and again. Red eyes, 3 legs, short arms, a gray body, and each time insisted it was not a prank, not a misidentification. To him, the Enfield Horror was real. The consistency of these accounts, combined with physical evidence, gave the story a weight that could not be ignored. Over time, the intensity of the sightings faded. The monster hunters left. The papers moved on. But the residents of Enfield never forgot. McDaniel stood by his testimony until his death. The tracks photographed by police were filed away, but never explained. No exotic animals were reported missing. No escaped circus creatures were discovered, and no hoaxer ever confessed. Skeptics later tried to claim it was a kangaroo or an ape kept illegally as a pet, but none of those theories accounted for the glowing eyes, the claw marks on the door, or the 3-legged gait. For the town of Enfield, Illinois, the horror was never solved. It simply vanished, leaving fear and mystery in its wake. Now, let us treat this case as we always do, examining the evidence point by point. First, did the entity show intelligence? Yes. It approached the front door, the most human point of entry, and scratched deliberately. When fired upon, it retreated strategically. Later, it returned to the same household, showing targeted behavior rather than random wandering. Second, did it communicate? While no words were spoken, witnesses described a scream unlike any known animal, a vocalization that suggests an unknown form of communication. Third, was there physical evidence? The answer is yes. Scratches on the door, 6-toed tracks measured and documented by police, and bullet holes testifying that shots were indeed fired. Fourth, was it oppressive? The repeated focus on McDaniel's home, the scratching at the door, and the terror it instilled all point to oppression. Fifth, were there multiple witnesses? Yes. Neighbors, children, police officers, and reporters all contributed accounts. And finally, the moral polarity. The creature's behavior was invasive, frightening, and malicious. It approached a home, scratched at the threshold, and terrified a community. This is not neutral. It is hostile. My conclusion is firm. The Enfield Horror was no ordinary animal. It was a non-human entity, hostile, intelligent, and likely demonic in nature. Not a poltergeist, not a simple haunting, but something else. A threshold predator. An entity that tests the limits of human safety by scratching at doors and windows, by probing boundaries, by waiting to see who will let it in. The Enfield Horror of Illinois remains one of America's strangest documented encounters. For some, it is folklore. For others, it is proof that things exist outside the known order of the world. But for Henry McDaniel and his neighbors, it was not a story. It was real. It scratched their doors. It screamed in their fields. And for one night in April of 1973, something unexplainable walked the streets of Enfield. Something that should not exist. And that, my friends, was the Enfield Horror, one of the strangest and most chilling encounters ever recorded on American soil. A creature with glowing red eyes, 6-toed tracks, and an impossible 3-legged gait. Was it an undiscovered species? An escaped experiment? or something darker, something not of this world, testing the boundaries of human fear? One thing is certain. In Enfield, Illinois in 1973, dozens of lives were changed forever. If you want me to cover more real American cases like this, hauntings, possessions, and unexplained monsters, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are just scratching the surface. Until next time, keep your doors locked, your lights low, and remember, some horrors don't stay in stories. They walk among us.